This is KWR, telling our story together. Welcome to KWR broadcast. My guest today is Reverend Priscilla Nyawira. Reverend Priscilla Nyawira is a Presbyterian minister of Word and Sacrament with the PCEA Church, that is the Presbyterian Church of East Africa. She is also a theologian and a student at Fuller Theological Seminary in California, United States. Karibu sana mchungaji. And to start us off, I want to invite you to tell us a little bit about who the Reverend is and what brought you into ministry.
Okay. Asante sana mchungaji Keriako. And you have introduced me well, Priscilla. Nimetoka Nyeri. Most of my ministry years have been around Kiambu, specifically the current Kiambu Presbytery, Banana Parish. Now, let me say, I wouldn't point one thing that brought me to ministry other than the call of God that really convicts a person that you cannot stay where you are. You have to do this. And that is what I got around 2009. It took me like 4 years to understand what calling was and where I was being called. And with the help of mentors, my parish ministers, the elders, and many others who have been in ministry before me, confirming that call, I started the ministry journey. I had started. Sometimes we take ministry as just being mchungaji, but actually, we start early. Like the things that you do, you find yourself doing, whether you're a deacon, whether you're whatever it is you are. And I think mine started when I was ordained as an elder in 2009. And then it went on. In 2013, I joined Presbyterian University of East Africa, where I met you, Dr. Kiriako. Ordained in 2016. And then went on to Mau Summit Outreach, PCA Mau Summit Outreach, where again the call to further my studies outside of Kenya came, and that's when I joined Fuller Theological Seminary here in California in 2018. And that's where I have been pursuing masters, finished, got into another one, and life goes on.
Thank you. I understand that you are currently researching on alcoholism. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that research and what some of your findings are in a very brief way before we get into other questions in regard to alcoholism?
Yeah, I think my biggest find was that addiction and alcoholism in this case is actually a disease. It's a disorder, a medical disorder that is treated, but also that requires a more holistic approach, not just something you cannot just be given tablets or some shots and then you go home. But at the point where somebody has become addicted to a substance, you're sick and that person needs help. So that I think was my biggest finding. And so also finding ways where, how do we deal with that? What comes with addictions? A lot of stigma, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of, not having the knowledge to understand what addiction is. And therefore, we never operate in a vacuum. So when we don't have an idea what something is, we create our own understanding of that something. And I feel like in the cases of alcoholism, that has been the case. That when we don't understand what addiction is or what alcoholism is, we have our own societal and cultural construct of what it is and what should be done.
Again, thank you for that. And I thank you very much again for your recent teaching on alcoholism that you did for
Okay.
our broadcast, and where you addressed the question how to communicate the gospel to a group that is increasingly becoming a big demographic in our country, Kenya. And I would say possibly it's also outside of Kenya. So in that speech or teaching that you had, you say that alcoholism and the gospel are words that are not commonly used together in our church today. What exactly did you mean by that?
What I meant is that there are some issues that the church, Kenyan church, and actually the church at large, kind of avoid. Maybe because they don't understand, maybe because they feel that that is not the business of the church, or maybe because they feel they do not have those people in their midst, and so there is nothing to address. It is an issue that most churches, circle around, and nobody want to delve into it. So understanding that the reason why I say that is because I do not remember hearing any sermon or even teaching on alcoholism anywhere. But I have seen people who come forward to get born again and they are completely drunk, and we pray for them and we rejoice. And then one month later, we find them where we left them, drunk than they were before. And therefore, there has to be something. But there was no conversation of what is this? Where is this person coming from? It is just a matter of come in front, we pray for you, and now you have received Christ and everything is good. So there is no conversation in church.
You remind me one time when I was serving in Kenya of this man who was quite endearing to all of us, and he had a calling into children's ministry. But but I believe he was struggling with alcoholism, and he smoked a lot. And so one time he was brought to the session, and there was back and forth, and it was, why do you do these things? And it was funny the way he put it, because he said that the doctor said that he should be smoking 1 SM, at least one a day, at least 1 SM a day. Definitely that is not the case. But my point is, this is an individual who was in the church and who was a deacon, and some understood him, but majority never understood where he was coming from. But I don't think we also, even myself, I fully understood the the problem that he was dealing with here, alcoholism. So basically what you're saying, it's very true of our society, that there is that
and if I
element.
can interject,
Go ahead.
there, it
Yeah,
could
go
be
ahead.
true that the doctor actually told him to take 1 a day. It could be true because, see, you cannot tell somebody who is addicted to a substance to stop without a recourse. Most of the time, they are helped by tapering down. If they were taking a whole packet, they have to keep on reducing, and so that the body does not go into shock. And who knows, maybe he was taking 3 packets, and maybe that was the negotiation with the doctor. Can you taper down? And maybe he found himself taking 1 a day, but that 1 a day, somebody found out. And our church, we think drinking alcohol is a sin, smoking is a sin, and all those things. And if we see you doing something like that, we don't care what informed it, we condemn you. So it could be that the doctor told him to taper down. I am not saying that is not the case, but it can happen.
It was funny the way he put it, and it is possible that actually the doctor may have recommended that. Which brings me to my other question, because again, coming out from the teachings that you did maybe a week ago, and this is where you mentioned that societal perceptions and expectations in our church today and in Christianity is that of
Yes.
perfection. And
Yes.
and therefore it limits us in a big way.
Yeah.
And even though I understand fully what you meant by that, could you elaborate a little more that the expectation is that of perfection? And I think it does limit the way we interact with those that are as perfect as we are.
Yes. Yes. I don't know whether it's the way we were taught about Christianity that we became maybe what theologians would call Puritans, where once you commit your life to Christ, the bar is so high, it's like you cease being a human being. It is true the Holy Spirit is at work in us, but it's also true that sanctification is a process. And it doesn't mean we are not born again. It means the Holy Spirit is doing some work in us daily. But we have been, we have this social construct in our Christianity that once I get born again, this is what is required of me, including not stop, don't talk to those people. You are no longer there. So I think it's our interpretation of the Bible where Paul would say you are not of the world. It's actually Jesus who said you are in this world, but you're not of this world. And so I think we run off with the we are not of this world and have nothing to do with the world. But you see, Jesus said, we are in the world, everything about it. And this body does not cease to be this fallible body which craves, which is tempted. It's a work of the Holy Spirit. So when I say that we in church, the reason why that man in your congregation would, the leadership found him to be unworthy is because he did not measure up to the standards of the church. You're supposed to be like this. You're not supposed to be smoking. You're not supposed to be this. But nobody listened to him. Nobody asked him, but why? Nobody asked the history. And so I don't know why we misunderstand this, because the Bible is clear, like Jesus came to the lost, and he keeps on, even when he saves, or even when he has an encounter with somebody, he would direct them to the priests so that they can continue growing. Others followed him, so they continued growing. But we have made a conversion to be this one time event, and therefore it's either or and never both end. And so those who are in church, and by church I mean the four walls, are only the saints. Anyone else who is in the process does not count. Very few people can live to that. Very many people are in church, but they are hiding a lot because, woe unto you if you're found. Very many people struggle, but they don't have where to go. They don't know where to go because where do you go? And if you go, let me use my own church, the Presbyterian Church of East Africa. What happens if a person comes to the court, the session, and says, this is how I am? First of all, you are stripped of everything. Sometimes you'll be excommunicated. I think we need to up our ante on how to do pastoral care, and more importantly, how to interpret the Bible contextually.
Well, I have always been an advocate of, revisiting and reviewing our theology in a big way, and particularly the theology of the fall and the theology of, Pauline theology that speaks about the issues that you you're bringing up here, because, and even the theology of heaven, our thinking about heaven and our thinking of
Yes.
God, and the human part of it. And I think this informs a lot how we interact with one another, and even how we allow culture to inform the way we act. But that is a discussion for another day. I want us to keep, to think a little bit more and putting the whole discussion into its context. Why is alcoholism, in your opinion, maybe through your research and so forth, you could have found out these. Why is it classified as an addiction when you're alcoholic, when you become an alcoholic, that literally you are addicted?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that I've been in conversation with a person in Kenya, a very fine man who is in that process of recovery. He's not using anymore, but and he challenged me because he listened to that broadcast and he said, Priscilla, we no longer call them alcoholics. And I was like, okay, what do we call them? And say, you see, that by itself is stigmatizing. So we call them, and let me actually read what he said. And he knows that I'm doing this, so I have his permission to do this. He said, what did he say? He said that you refer to them as people with alcohol use disorder, because actually alcoholism is a disorder. But for the sake of people understanding alcoholism, you ask why I think it's a disease. Was that the question?
It's an addiction, but
It's an
it goes
addiction.
both ways. A disease,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I actually, so alcoholism, many professionals, doctors who have done this, is described as a consequence of biological adaptations and damage produced by alcohol. That, I think, that is very key. It's a damage produced by alcohol, and it affects on the many parts of the body. One, the neuroendocrine, the nervous, the immune, and the digestive systems. So it encompasses all the processes of the body. It is the reason why it's called an addiction is because I think everybody who is addicted to have alcohol begins by taking a drink, that first drink, which nobody is coerced to do unless, of course, you are a captive and people are abusing you. But in most cases, you drink that first drink because maybe you're curious, or maybe it's just a social engagement, or maybe it's just you want to be like your peers. The fact is, you just take it for fun. Or there are those who are dealing with emotional and many mental issues, a lot of difficulties in their families, a lot of difficulties in their lives, and they go to alcohol as a way of coping. I don't want to think about how I'm going to face my family without anything. I'm the bread, I'm the provider, and I don't have anything, and I don't have the courage to go and to my family. So what do? I'd rather drink, get a little bit high, so I can get the courage to go if they ask me, and I can say, "Staki mambo mingi," because at that point, you have empowered yourself with the fake empowerment of getting high. So, but when they are starting, nobody thinks I'll get addicted. But as they use more and more, they reach a point where they are no longer in control. It is actually the alcohol that is controlling them. The body craves, and that's all they have to for them to function. The body functions, the brain functions have changed, and therefore the alcohol is the one that dictates how the body functions. At that point, that person is addicted. So it's not my thinking, it's a scientific fact that at that point, that person is not the one who is dictating what they are doing. They are addicted. And it therefore becomes a disorder.
Thank you. And in fact, one of my, again, as a theologian and as a scholar, another thing that I've been advocating for theological schools to do is to, on the curriculum, to have at least 2 years where the student engage and train as a psychologist. That is the first formation of becoming a minister. One needs to understand, how the mind works and how that affects behavior in a big way. Not just an introductory part that leads you to, pastoral counseling and all that, but fully understanding some of these things so that we may understand fully, at least not, because definitely a minister is, I'm not saying a minister should become a doctor or should become a psychiatrist. All I'm saying is that to understand this psychological and physical harm some of these things have on our people, so that we are able to engage them at the point of their need. And I want to ask, now that you have given a clearer understanding of why alcoholism is, in view of many research and and scholars and people who have dealt with this for a long time, at what point do we draw a line between individual, responsibility and addiction, if I make sense?
Even when somebody is addicted, even when somebody is suffering from those disorders, there is always a responsibility. In fact, one of the organizations that have been very instrumental in recovery is the Alcoholics Anonymous, the AA. And the AA use the 12 steps formula where they have 12 steps of recovery. In, I think, either step 1 or step 2, I think step 1 is about owning up. I have messed up big time. And then accepting that they do not have the power to change themselves and they need a higher power. Nobody, even when we are sick, even when we have a flu, we have to own up that we are sick. In alcoholism, they have to own up that something went wrong. There is a responsibility of that first drink, of that behavior where I started taking alcohol, not because I was coerced, right? So I take responsibility that I started it. However, I did not know that I'm predisposed to addiction. I didn't know I am predisposed to alcoholism. I didn't know my limit. Because what happens with alcoholism is that it's not so much how much you take, it is how much that gets into the bloodstream. And because we are genetically different, your capacity and my capacity are different. How you are affected by alcohol and how I'm affected is different. But we will never know unless we are in it. All right. And so these people, these are the things that we get to learn the hard way. That you are in deep mess. That's the only way you learn that actually you are predisposed. Your body cannot hold, but you're already in the mess. So the responsibility here, the personal responsibility, is that I started this. And now it has blown up into something that I cannot control. It is also the responsibility of the person suffering those disorders, or the person affected by alcoholism, to own up and say, I need help. Most of the times you see people taking their loved ones to rehab against their will, and those people clean up and come back. But because their resolve is not still there, they still go back. And secondly, because they have not understood that they need a higher power, they still depend on their own power. And that is why it is very important for the church to look at alcoholism. Personally, I look at it from the physical and also from the spiritual point of view. Because if you look at it from the spiritual point of view, it is also one of the many facets of our fallen nature. Also, if you think about idol worship, what is an idol? It is something that we adore. It is something that is at the center of everything that we are. It takes the place of God. If you think of somebody who is using alcohol or who is overwhelmed by alcoholism, they wake up the first thing in the morning is to take a drink. They will do anything because their body cannot function without. That, in essence, becomes their idol. That is idolatry. It becomes their God, even though they don't realize it. And so when we are dealing with this, we have to take responsibility that we are also, this person, there is something. It is a way of filling in an emptiness.
Yeah.
Just like when we were getting saved, you felt that emptiness. You tried everything, but you could not save yourself. But there is an infilling that came when you gave your life to Christ. That emptiness, regardless of what has brought it, we look for things to fill it, the bad things. And that is what happens with people using alcohol.
Well,
And they have
definitely.
to own up.
Yeah, definitely. What you're saying is true. But I'm also wondering, in our makeup, for something to become an idol,
Yeah.
I think society has a big role to play in it. And we know we are who we are, partly
Yes.
because of our parents, the society, and all that. Is there a
Yes.
societal responsibility in in this problem of alcoholism and addiction? And if there are, could you name a few that comes to mind?
Yeah, big time. There is. Um, let me still go back to our Kenyan context. When I was growing up, I didn't know that women can take alcohol because it has been a societal and cultural construct that is what older men, responsible men, when they are using their recreational time, they go for 1 or 2 beers, especially over the weekends. My own father used to drink over the weekend, right? But we knew we cannot touch that, right? And so, but it also makes the bar a place of recreation for men. And I'm not demonizing the bar. There is also the creation, the societal creation. I don't know, maybe you will help me here because you're also a theologian, that we separate, uh, we don't separate the alcohol and the tendency to drink. What, like, if this is alcohol, is this the sin, or is it my drinking that is causing me to not be in control of my faculties, right? And so I don't know, the society has created this, in Christian circles, like I said, the Puritan um, construct where everybody is supposed to be clean and good and going to heaven, and no room that they are falling and they keep falling and God raises them up. And even though we say we live by repenting, but also the societal construct that I can switch on and off. I take the drink when I want, when I don't want, I switch back. That is true in the beginning. But because we don't know the difference between having a drink and being addicted, the society still expects you to stop. Why can't you stop drinking? Why do you have to drink every day? Why do you have to waste money? That's a societal construct that alcoholism is something that you can switch on and off. It's not. It's a disorder.
Well, definitely, as we say, and I think there is a friend of mine who had posted something on Presbyterianism and alcoholism, and I lifted the fact that we know it's an obvious in Kenya that in every village there are two things that are powerful: the local church and the local bar. So
Yeah.
those who want to, to take one for the road, they know where to go in the village. And those who
Yeah.
want to develop their spirituality. But these one, the point that you raised, that some people are predisposed to
Yes.
become alcoholics, and
Yes.
therefore it is in their gene. And
Yeah.
there's an element within the church, because for long, let's talk about the Presbyterianism in PCEA, and I'm going to speak of a particular case here, the case of PCEA Roresho, where they have strictly determined that they know there are some people that are predisposed. And therefore, when they are offering communion, they offer non-alcoholic drinks to those people who may think they are predisposed. To what extent has the church played into alcoholism, even unknowingly?
Yeah, that I usually say is the biggest irony of our church, that we still offer Holy Communion with alcohol. I want to commend that church, the PCA Loresha, for doing that, for taking that step to offer alternatives. I will challenge them, and not just Loresha, but the whole church. I will challenge them to actually go the step further and just do away with alcohol. Because even when you're giving people, this is Ribena, this is alcohol smell, just the smell itself is triggering. If somebody has been an alcoholic, it is so triggering, just the smell of wine, and that wine smells. The wine we use, I'm not saying it smells bad, but it is very strong. So you can imagine somebody who is struggling, and you have aroused their sense of smell, and then the mind remembers. And then they remember the high they used to get. Don't be surprised if that person takes the Ribena and then on the way out goes to the nearest bar. Because we lie to ourselves that we give them Ribena. If we are offering in the same sanctuary, we have wine that they can smell. And these are people who have been taking. So the slightest, they can catch it. So I will want to challenge the church. Can we go the long haul and just do away? Because we have to accept that this is not 1970. This is not the 80s. In this time and age, the alcohol industry has become so cheap. Like when I was growing up, my parents, or my father for that matter, and many of the people were only taking beer from Kenya breweries, right? They were taking their Tuskers and their White Caps. Today, there are all kinds of alcohol. They are very toxic, they are very strong, and they are very cheap. And they damage big time. And therefore,
go ahead.
Yeah, and therefore we that's why we have so many young people, because they have access. They have access to these things. Can we stop? Can we no? Can we have a conversation? The church, can we have a conversation? Why are we still using alcohol in this day and age?
I'm a witness. As a minister now, as a young minister, I believe there were 14 or 13 congregations when I started off. And on the Easter weekend, the expectation was that the minister should offer Holy Communion to all of the congregation, or during a specific week. And I was very young in ministry. I was also young. And there's always the expectation that the minister is going to take from the cup, in every congregation that you go to. My first experience, I think it was the second experience, When I went to my fifth congregation, I knew right away I was tipsy. And I knew that if I don't pretend and fake to be drinking and continue drinking, it will not take me too long before I become an alcoholic. And so from that time, I determined with myself, I'll be pretending. I'm at the altar, but I'm pretending to drink, but not drinking.
Yes.
When I realized very quickly that the damage it will start small, and we can talk about this later. Ministry and alcoholism and where the ministers are. But I was just piggybacking on the fact that the temptation is so strong, and unless we offer an alternative, it can become a source of what we are trying to do away with, and at the same time not forgetting that we are talking about predisposition. My guest again today is Reverend Priscilla Nyawira, also goes by the name Guju, and she is a Presbyterian minister of Word and Sacrament with the PCEA Church, and she is also a theologian and a theological student at Fuller, a Theological Seminary in California. Now, moving on, my sister.
Yeah.
Beside, the issues that come to the individuals, we know that alcohol has caused havoc in families, not that just with the individuals, but within certain families. And there are several people who have reached out to me after our interviews, and they spoke about their own, what they're going through as families. What would you say about that? We have talked about the individual and the predisposition, and definitely our understanding. Even before we come now to the theological part of it, I want to hear more on the impact on the family in terms of violence and the economics of it.
Thank you. Whenever we see a person who is battling alcoholic disorders, we just see that person. But we fail to see the family. We fail to see the husband or the wife who has to deal with this person daily. We fail to see the father or the mother whose children have to see this daily. Alcohol breaks families. It is breaking families big time because the person becomes, like I said, this thing affects even your own metabolism, the way you process food. Most of them, you will find that they don't eat much. They just need their dose. They don't eat much. They become emaciated, and because the first thing is, let me get my thing, they fail to go to their work. They steal from work so that they can maintain their habit. One of the biggest things that, in fact, a red flag to know when you're starting out to know that you're predisposed is drinking and blacking out. Like you didn't drink much, but you blacked out. That should tell you to keep off. These people drink. Maybe they were thinking, I'll just take something to stabilize myself and then go to work. But they blacked out. And we'll find them tomorrow morning. And you miss work 2-3 days. What will happen? You get fired. There were people who are depending on you. And now what will you do? And also because the habit of actually selling things, everything, so that you can maintain your habit. I don't think there is anyone who will put up with that, even if your family loves you very much. And so it has broken families. And in our case, and especially in central Kenya, where it is affecting more men than women. And the societal construct that men are the providers. And then they know that, and they pride themselves in that. And then now they're in a situation where they cannot keep a job. They don't even have the ability, the physical ability to do a job. And they become, how do you go to tell your wife you don't have anything for the children? You drink more so that you can go and nobody will ask you a question. And if they do, you become violent. Now, there is violence on top of the fact that you cannot provide. History and science has also shown, and I think we have seen it being, televised in Kenyan televisions, that even the sexual activity goes down, and so even the reproduction goes down. Like, there has been an outcry that they cannot procreate awazai because there is no action. They are dead. They live for the bottle. As long as they have that, they cannot do anything. And even those who can do, I would encourage people, Dr. Keriako, and allow me to say this man who I was talking to, he is on Twitter, and he talks a lot about his journey. He's called Crispus Kimaru, and I know he because he's in public, he doesn't mind. Those who are on Facebook can go to Lynn Goge's forum and search his interview. And it is amazing, a person who has gone through it saying what it has done. He has gone public. Families are broken. They cannot provide, they cannot perform. So basically, the society is broken. You can imagine the kids who see their father like that. You can imagine, or their mother. You can imagine the spouse. And then the ridicule. Here's the thing. They are not the only ones who are criticized or stigmatized, not just the person affected, but also the family. People don't know what to do with you, by the way. The church doesn't know how to deal with you when your wife is drinking. And if you are a leader in church, you have failed to maintain your house well, you may even be relieved of your duties if you are a leader. People don't know how to deal with the family. So on top of stigmatizing the person, we also stigmatize the family because we don't even know how to offer pastoral care. Mchungaji, can I read for you one of the things that I was taught to say by a person recovering?
Go ahead.
The church in Kenya, unfortunately, is the weak link in fighting alcohol and substance abuse. The pastors and priests are too judgmental. Most of the members I mentor, this is a person recovering, most of the members I mentor have an experience with a servant of God, but nothing came of it. I got born again so many times in a bid to stop suffering, but the pastors just wanted another sheep and not a healed sheep. So I relapsed. And then he says, and he's telling me, I've taken much time to invest in understanding, but how many pastors go to that length? They tell us it's demons, they exorcise them, they slap us to get out the demons. All this time, they haven't asked me, what drives you to drink?
Wow.
That is very sobering.
It is.
Very, very sobering for me that we don't. And then he continues to say, please ask them to listen to us more. We are not babies, just unwell. We are just unwell people.
Wow.
Just like you can't discriminate against a diabetic, don't do it for a substance user or an addict. This is a person who has gone through family breakup. This is where we are. I don't know if I have answered you.
Yes, you have. And in the interest of time,
yes,
this is a sobering conversation, and with just what you have just said right now, if I feel like I would want us to go on and on, but we can always extend. We can take it another notch higher next time. It has reminded what you have just read, and I think I shared with you last time. When we were growing up, as a youth, and born again Christian, and we always loved, testing out waters in different churches. And one particular church that interested me was Dr. Ada Gitonga's church. And one morning, I determined I was going to go to that church in Huruma. And so, took Ama 3 and went to Huruma. As I was getting in, I can remember vividly, because I don't know if that congregation, if that building is still where it was, but I was dropped off by the matatu, and you just walk straight into the sanctuary, like straight into. So I'm dropped off, and a guy comes out with me. He's 100% drunk. He is all overflow, and then he wanted to get into the church. He wanted to get into the church compound. And we have these young men who are all Christians, and they're dressed up in black suits. They looked very nice. They looked very professional and so forth. But when these drunkard tried to get in, they pulled him and threw him with all their might towards the road. He almost got knocked out. And do you know, I did not attempt to go to that church. I felt so bad within myself and so angry that what we're supposed to portray wasn't. There was not an iota of Christianity in that action. Anyhow, in your teachings last time, you said that healing takes place. Let me read it just as you wrote it, or as you read it out. Healing takes place in a community, not in solitude. What do you mean by that? And how then can a church become that community that can provide healing?
Thank you. I want to say, even when we have the ordinary diseases, we embrace those people, we take care of them. They not only use the drugs or see the doctor, there is also the love. They feel our love, which encourages them to fight. There is also the community. Well, when you are admitted in hospital where all of you are sick, one of the reasons that makes Alcoholic Anonymous meetings work is because it is a meeting of people who are battling the same thing. And then you go and realize there are some people who are worse off than you. But also you go and realize there are people who are telling success stories. And so they give you a reason to fight on. When we come to the church, like I say, this person is a person who comes from a family. So it takes the concerted effort of the family to support them. As they admit they need help, they need our support because they have already said they need another power. They do not have it in themselves. When we come to church, why do we go to church? Because we grow spiritually in a community. We not only sing hymns, we also encourage one another. Our testimonies are our strength. The person who is down doesn't need to be down. That person knows that there are people who are supporting them, and these are people who love them, and these are people who don't judge them, but they want the best for them. Even for parents, when your child knows they have your full support, when they know that you still pick them up when they fall, and when you know even when you counsel them in love, and you do not condone bad manners, but you don't throw them outside your house. We have to understand that these people need love. And our community is a community of sick people. Church is not a community of perfect people. It's a community of people who are seeking God for various ailments of the heart, of the mind, of the soul. And we come together so that we can encourage each other. And when somebody falls, we hold their hand and walk together. But we cannot leave some aside. What you have shared about the Huruma case, I have been talking about, we see them even in our churches. Somebody comes, is unstable like this, and the ushers, God bless you, but would you allow them to get into the house of their father? Because all they want is to sit. It's the house of their father. We have to stop making God our ours only. He is the Father of everybody. We also have, as a community, have to start seeing the image of God in those people. When Jesus was asked which is the biggest commandment, he said two: love and honor God with all your heart, with all your everything. And the second one is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor can be anyone. Your neighbor is that person you're dealing with there. That person having alcoholic disorders is our neighbor. And we don't love them because we like them. I think people don't differentiate that. You don't have to like me, but God commands you to love me. This love is action. That you want me to get into church. Maybe in the midst of the songs and the sermons and just the tranquility and the peace in the church, you will find your God. But when we don't want them in that space, when we make church so clean than the person, when we make the building so important than the person, when we do not want to sit next to that person because, then I think we have lost the idea of the Great Commission. They cannot heal by themselves. I cannot heal by myself. I need people around me. I need people who affirm me. I need people who tell me, Priscilla, you are losing it. You need to shape up. These people need that community. We don't heal in solitude. We heal in community.
Well, thank you once again, and for recognizing the fact that in that community, for us to be able to build this community, we have to recognize the human person. We have to, to uphold human dignity. That even though this individual is at this point in time is vulnerable and is a victim of alcoholism, he's still loved by God. And the problem, I think, with most of us is that we take the place of God. We defend God, who has the capacity to defend himself, who has the capacity to judge people. But yet we take that opportunity. But the invitation to all of us in this solidarity is to take our place, I think, to take our place as people who've been called to be healers. And you did mention a couple of things. You talked about healing, you talked about freedom, you talked about being enablers, and you talked about support. I think this and many others that you have already referenced to today. And I want to thank you for your time and even for bringing out these important, these important things that we need to do as a community. Before we wrap it up, you've just reminded me, when you were talking about why are people so judgmental? Like you see somebody walk in church, you want to judge them. We started off with perfection, right? And it reminded me of something that Chinua Achebe said long time ago when he was discussing. I don't know whether you have read Joseph Conrad's book in the Heart of Darkness. And in this book, he says, why is it that Joseph Conrad kept referencing, everywhere there's a black person, he would use these dark and ugly images of dark. And then finally, Achebe says he learned that these are anxious people. And therefore, when you have anxiety within yourself, you try to take the weakest point in your life and you say, oh, I am better off. I'm not like that. And possibly, people are dealing with a lot of anxiety, fear, and unknowns that they are not able to confront their own fears, to be able to not judge, but to meet these people at the point of their need. And as you said, it just needs love. If you allow me the space to come in with my drunkardness, as long as I'm not disturbing your peace, allow me to be in that tranquility. That was powerful. That who knows that in that moment of quietness, that is when God is going to speak to me. So thank you once again. So before we wrap it up, and we are coming to the end of it, do you have one more word to say, to to conclude our discussion, and I'm trusting we're going to have more conversations on these and on other issues that we have touched on today.
Okay. Well, I think two things. One, I don't want people to get confused that I am giving a free, like a free look or 100%. I'm not excusing those people who are dealing with addictions and who are dealing with alcoholism. I am saying at the point where they cannot help themselves, they are sick. I am also challenging them, by the way, to accept that they are sick and to accept that they cannot save themselves. My point, and especially for the church, is our perception. And I am encouraging us to change our perception of addictions as a point where somebody is so low they cannot help themselves. And no matter how much we condemn them, it's not going to change the narrative. It's going to drive them deeper into their addiction. And so I'm challenging the church. How can we change the narrative? Leaders of the church, can we research a little bit just to have a simple understanding? You said about having a whole course on psychology. Even if you don't have that, if you have enough to be able to realize or to determine this person is at this level, and then you can refer them. You can refer them to professionals. You can refer them to institutions. You don't have to do everything by yourself, but you are well equipped to see this is happening and this is how I can help. As a church, we have to realize what we have been called for the Great Commission. What does the Great Commission say? You go to the ends of the earth, you go to nations. Now, I want to baptize. This is a nation of people struggling with alcoholism. It's a nation by itself, but we have been called to all nations to teach, to baptize, to set people free. But we cannot set them free when we are closing the doors on them. When we have become gatekeepers, we have to understand that we are called to outside. The problem with us, Dr. Kiriako, is that our mission is done inwards, in the four walls. And once in a while, we would plan a trip outside there for mission. But you see, it's go ye, go forth. It is outward to the person right outside the church who has slept there the whole night, outside to the person who didn't eat last night, outside to all people. So I am challenging the church. Please listen. They have said it themselves. Listen to us. Understand why they started drinking. Understand where they are. Understand whether they actually need help. Because until they need help, until they accept they need help, we may not be able to help them. Secondly, is the theological part. We have to make our theology contextual and incarnational. Contextual in the fact that if, for example, if I am having a conversation with people in that group, I will contextualize my theology in interpreting the Bible in a way that shows them a God who can liberate, a God who is not judgmental, a God who loves them even in their situation and is willing to pull them out. It will also be incarnational in the model of Jesus Christ, who actually was not afraid to touch a leper, was not afraid to touch a dead person, was not afraid to eat with the tax collector, was not afraid to be touched by a sinful woman and be washed even with her hair, because it is Emmanuel, God with us, right here. If this person cannot see God in me, if this person cannot see the love of God in the way I interact with them, it doesn't matter how much I shout on the pulpit, they won't feel the love. It has to be incarnational, it has to be contextual.
Thank you so much. That's a good way of wrapping it. I cannot add anything onto all that you have said. And I want to thank you so much once again, Reverend, for availing yourself. I know you're busy, you have other things to do, but allowing yourself to be used of God at this moment to speak to us, to address an issue that is affecting our community, and sometimes an issue that we are unable to wrestle with boldly and with courage. I thank you for the conviction. I thank you for the research. I'm praying for you that you'll be able to share widely. You are finding out, and all that your recommendations would be. But in the meantime, I look forward to many more chances to interview with you and to speak with you in regard to ministry and into issues that affect us all together. Again, my guest today was Reverend Priscilla Nyawira, who is a Presbyterian minister of Word and Sacrament with the PCEA Church, and also a student and a theologian at Fuller Theological Seminary here in California. Once again, thank you so much, Mchungaji, and God bless you. And bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
This is KWR, telling our story together.